right, welcome to the Bella Grace podcast, where we are empowering you to embrace the beautiful grace found in recovering your authentic self. And this season, we are doing that by telling stories of people who are living a sober life and having fun doing it. We are also sharing stories this season of people who grew up with alcoholic or addicted parents and how they have risen above that experience. So you'll see a big mix of stories this season. I'm super excited about each and every one of them. This week, we have my new friend, Mike. He is an author, a life coach, and a recovering addict. Welcome to the show, Mike. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. And I'm also a public speaker. I will add that too. So
there we go.
Yeah.
He does all the things. All the things.
I'm trying to do this. This is my practice for if one day I get called a Tony Robbins stage or a TEDx, this is my practice for all that. So
yeah. Well, you have an incredible story. Like you shared some of it with me when we did our pre-podcast chat. And I was so excited for the listeners to hear your story because you've gone from the bottom, changed your life, and are doing incredible things now. So why don't you tell us how you got where you are today and what you're up to these days?
All right. Well, I guess I just, what I usually do is just go back to the beginning of things. And it goes back to my first book I wrote. In the first chapter, I said being born on the wrong side of the womb was the very first chapter. And people kind of laugh at that, but it's kind of true because when I was born, both my parents were very young. My mom had just turned 19 just a couple months before I was born. My biological father had just turned 17 3 months before I was born. So they were both young, both doing drugs. It was the 70s, it was, just those times, there was, I think, a recession going on at the time. I was too young to remember. I don't know. Jimmy Carter was the president and all this, But anyway, my biological dad was very abusive to my mother. And when I was about a year old, it's taken me some hypnotherapy to actually remember this, but because I had family tell me that I wasn't there, but my biological father set my mother's face on fire in front of me.
Wow.
Poured cologne on her face and set her face on fire. My grandparents, being the good Christian people, they didn't raise my mom that way. To take that stuff, they took her to the hospital and they had to hold her down and scrub her face to make sure she didn't have scarring and stuff, which was very excruciating and painful. So that was my first real experience with this kind of lifestyle. And then when I was 2, my mom had already divorced my biological dad and met and married my stepdad by the time just a year later. So, did not give it time to, I think she wanted someone more to protect her. I don't know the situation, but he was the only dad I've ever known. Now, when I say my dad, I mean my stepdad that raised me. He's, both him and my mom have passed on now. My biological father's in prison the rest of his life. And I haven't seen him since I was 2, and I'll be 45 in October. So if that gives you any indication. I do have other brothers and sisters that I know from him, but that's only because I did the due diligence to find them. But from the time I was 2 until I was 17 years old, my stepdad brutally abused me as and he hit me like I was a grown man. It did not matter. Even as young as 2 years old, I've had 67 something hospital visits before I was 16 years old. I grew up in West Texas, Eastern New Mexico, so I lived in Lubbock for a long time. My dad was a member of the 1% club, I should say, that's down there. And he wasn't home a lot, but when he was, that's what I came to know. And there was a lot of times growing up that if he wasn't around a lot, or if he was around, he was actually being nice, I felt weird, and I kind of provoke him, because it was just weird to me. I didn't know any other life, and I could tell people that just how abusive he was in detail, and it just jaw drops, and I'm like, what? It was normal for me,
That's all you knew.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I was transported to the Texas Tech Hospital there in Lubbock to have my head drilled open because it was swelling because he had beat me so bad. Just that's what I grew up with. Both my parents did drugs openly in front of us. growing up as kids because they wanted us to know the dangers of them. They didn't want us to do them, but they sure said, if you're going to do them, we'd rather you have them do them with us so that we know you're safe, because, they couldn't tell us no, that because they were doing it, And so but at 15 years old, when I started doing drugs, I was, I knew right from wrong at that time. I knew the potential dangers of it. I knew what it could do to me. And I just, it it was an escape, really was. So that's when I started doing them. Well, I did quit for a while to join the military to get away from my dad. And as he teared up, begging me not to go, I smiled as I was signing every one of those papers, like, I'm out of here. You ain't never go. Oh, well, boy, was that a mistake, because I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, did my basic training between my junior and senior year of high school, because I started reserves. As soon as I came back my senior year, just before I ended my senior year, I transferred to active duty right before AIT. That way, by the time I was done with AIT, I'd be active duty. And that was a mistake, because as soon as I got to Fort Hood, Texas, they sent me to Bosnia.
Oh, wow.
I went from Dallas to El Paso on that 8-hour bus ride, and then I got a 14-hour plane ride right after that. I didn't get no break or nothing. I'm like, are you kidding me? So, but I was in 4th Infantry Division, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's a sore subject. But I mean, I got to give the backstory a little bit. I came home, and I was not the same person. Not the same person at all. As a matter of fact, I remember one night that it was my apartment, because I'd already been administratively separated from the military, which I don't even understand why they did that, but I do, but I don't. But it was my apartment. My sister and brother and mom were living with me. He'd come over to visit them, and he got mad at me for something. And I said, this is my house. You can get out anytime. And of course, my sister and brother said the same thing. Of course, he left. Well, I said, you know what? You stay here. I'll leave. I took off walking. Well, he come down and grabbed me and was starting to hit me. And I blacked out. I don't remember what happened. I just know when I came to, there was about 4 people holding on to me. And this is the first time I've ever seen this man scared of anything. And his eyes were about as big around as saucers, but I know he never hit me again.
Yeah.
And I said, why y'all grabbing me? What's going on here? And they're like, are you kidding me? You don't remember a thing. You're nuts. And I said, no, I don't. I really don't. And it was at that time that I knew I had some issues, some really bad issues. And I mean, because before I went in the military, the reason why I went in there was because I had these urges to do some harm to people, and I knew they weren't natural. I didn't like it. And I said, I had to do something. I had to discipline myself or something. Well, I got the very opportunity to satisfy those urges when I went into the military. And I mean, I even had family that used to tell me we were just having bets on when you were going to become a serial killer. That's how bad he treated me, because that's, statistically speaking, that's where I would have fell in line to. But and that's why I went to the Army, was to try to resist some of those urges and have some self-discipline, and ended up unfortunately having to satisfy a few of them.
Yeah.
But I didn't know I needed counseling. When I got home, I didn't know how to get help. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of lost. I just walked around and begged people, just somebody kill me so I don't have to. That's all I thought about, was wanting to die. And the nightmares and I still have the nightmares to this day. I can't get rid of those, because between my dad and the military, it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can't get rid of it. But I don't let it define me anymore. I don't let it, I still have my good days and my bad days. And it usually takes me about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning to get myself together before I can speak to anybody, before I can function, especially speaking to people, because I'm not completely coherent. As a matter of fact, if there's a lot of loud noises going on outside. I live in an apartment with very thin walls. I have to keep my door locked, because if I'm not, fully coherent, I can't get out the door if it's locked. But if it's unlocked, I could hurt someone and not even know it. So, and I do have to keep in mind of that. But I I definitely, that's why I don't sleep a lot, even sober, because I work, because I'd rather not sleep and have to go through that, because I can stay awake. I can go on 8 hours of sleep a week. I do get exhausted and tired, but like earlier, I was just about to doze off. I said, wait a minute, no, I got a podcast, dude. I can't do this. um, it's a struggle some days, but some days most days I've found that inner peace and that happiness within and found some purpose. So I really don't, let it get to me. But when I have my bad days, I will isolate myself and I will get through it, because I can't interact with anybody like that, especially if there's a lot of chaotic stuff going on, because I'm I'm not physically here. I'm in a
Yeah.
different place. So, it's very hard to explain to people that when I'm just zoned out and you're calling my name and I'm not talking to you, don't keep talking to me, because you might trigger something that, because I'm not here, I'm physically here, but I am not in this place. I'm not,
Yeah. You're
the lights are
mentally
on, nobody's
somewhere
home.
else. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were
absolutely.
mentally somewhere else. And that's like a huge component of PTSD. And not to
Mhm.
mention you probably had a little bit of PTSD that you didn't even realize you had from the experience with your biological father.
That's exactly it. And
Yeah.
this was all going on. They used that excuse when I left the military. Why they administratively separated me was the PTSD, that they didn't catch it during my military enlistment physical. Uh, I know better. It was because whistleblowing, I believe, honestly, because that's one of the wars that they still haven't declassified anything yet, and they won't even talk about it in the United States. So I honestly know the truth, but that's the excuse they used, was because of
Yeah.
my PTSD. They called
Yeah.
it battle fatigue back then. It was,
Hmm.
uh, wasn't it? They said, you show signs and symptoms like you've been in war for 20 years, and I said, I have been in war for 20 years.
Yeah. Your
I
body
said, I
has
really
been.
have.
Yeah.
I lived in survival mode the whole time, and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I can't. I said, I'm not going to go through it all and explain it, because you wouldn't believe me anyway. You know,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, years later, when I ended up in prison at 40 years old, talking to the prison psychologist, I had to have him call my aunt to verify it, because he did not believe the stuff I was telling him. He thought I
Yeah.
was making it up, and he was like in shock. That he's like, why would you say stuff like that and lie like that? I'm like, you really think I'm making a story up? I said, here, I give you a number. You call my aunt, and she said, if that boy's saying it, you need to believe it, that it's true. He's not exaggerating. Um, but I knew, and when I hit my 20s, we'd moved to Michigan, and because for a fresh start, I didn't have a childhood. So at 20 something years old, I go there and I find a $12 an hour job at the time. And at that time, for a 20-year-old, that was good money. And I worked 40, 50 hours a week, and I had more money than what I knew what to do with. I had a little truck that cost $5 to fill up, because gas was 98 cents at the time. you know, and I made like $1,000 a week, just about, almost, because I was a single man. When you're 20 years old, that's a bad, bad, bad thing to have, is money that you can't spend unless you
Yes.
know how to save it. I'd never been
Yes.
taught that.
Nope. Yeah, my dad passed away when I was 8, and we got a huge settlement from his death. And when I turned 18, I all of a sudden had access to the entire trust fund. Well, a chunk of it, because they set it up so that I would get it in annuities. But I had close to $80,000 in the early 2000s as an 18-year-old, exactly 10 years after my dad died. Full blown addiction to meth. Um, yeah. I got access to it the day after I graduated high school, like literally graduated that night. Next morning, I woke up with it was $55,000 in my checking account, plus
And
some other money that was waiting to come in. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could see the rabbit hole you fell right down.
I sure did. I do
you
pride I do pride myself on the fact that I didn't spend a penny of my dad's money on drugs. I always said that. Like, I won't spend it on drugs, but I damn sure did spend it at Walmart tweaking my butt off.
Right. Well, and what the funny part about that is I knew about meth beforehand, because I had family that dealt with it, and I got I've always been in this criminal lifestyle. That's all I've known, except for when I went in the military. That was the only time I had any structure. But the minute I got home, it was like there was nobody there, and nobody knew. I lost all that camaraderie, that brotherhood. So I was lost. So I turned to, meth. Well, years later, here I'm in Michigan and 20 years old making all this money. I started getting tattoos everywhere. I went to a bar every night of the week, and then I met Lady H.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Yes.
mind you, because of my pain issues, I'd been on standing order for Vicodin 10, the 1,000 milligrams for
Hmm.
120 of them for like 10, 15 years. And I did heroin for the first time and I really liked it, but I'm like, I can't afford this right now because I'm out here, I'm partying, I've got all these girls going, and let me tell you what, I'm surprised I never caught nothing to be in my 20s because I was very reckless. When I say I did everything to the extreme, I mean I pushed the absolute limits of life itself in hopes that something would take me out because nothing else had. My dad hadn't, the military hadn't. And let me tell you what, people tried. And they tried over the years, and they tried it in the last few years. And I'm just like, I must have some kind of purpose here because there's been a lot of pretty badass men that have tried to, remove me from this world and couldn't get her done. I'm not saying that I'm just the baddest man on the planet, but I've survived a lot. But so I left that alone for a while, but I always continued to do the meth. And when I was 25, I went back to college and I went through a medical assisting program in 9 months. I've always known I've been smart. I've taken the Mensa IQ test and scored 145 like different times. Okay, I know I'm not a stupid person. I know the streets. So that's a very dangerous combination, and I used it to my advantage very well. I was, very affiliated. I knew people. I earned my respect. I followed my dad's footsteps. I joined motorcycle clubs. I lived that lifestyle. Well, come along about, I'm say 30 years old now, 32 years old, and I'm on my third wife by this time. And I have a $30 an hour job doing good. But I'm still getting high because I haven't dealt with none of my, because I've been through counselors, I've been through psychiatrists, and they all tell me the same thing. Well, you just got to do this. This is your coping skills and send you on your way. 3 days and you're done. I'm like, what the hell good is this helping me?
Yeah. And we talked about the fact that, like, I think it was you and I that we were talking about, like, once the drugs get out of your system, you still have to detox your mind. And a
Yes. Yeah.
lot of those rehab centers, like outpatient, inpatient, whatever, you go through detox, you get 30 days of treatment, 26, whatever your insurance pays for, whatever the state will pay for, and then they send you on your way. Well, we didn't get sick overnight.
No.
Our addictions were years in the making, like years. And it takes
And
years for us to undo that twisted
and the
thinking.
and the whole bad part about it is, and I have to go back just a little bit because I missed a crucial part. When I was married to my second wife, this was long when I had my surgery because I was stabbed in the stomach and I had a gastric sleeve surgery. I was 430 pounds. I was still in pain a lot. I lost 200 pounds in 8 months when they did this surgery because when I was stabbed in the stomach, they had to remove a lot of my stomach so they did the gastric sleeve. Well, I finally started losing a lot of weight, but I was still in immense pain because I've been carrying all this weight for so many years. And I was eating 120,000 or 10 milligram Norcos in 10 days, 120 of them in 10 days. You know what that did to my liver? I had fatty liver for a while and almost was pushing cirrhosis. A buddy of mine comes over and says, "Man," I said, "I'm just hurting. I can't move." And I went to work every day. I worked at True Green. I walked 10, 15 miles a day. I wore out 3 pair of boots a year doing that job. He says, "Here, we'll try this." And he hands me this brown chunk. And I said, "Is that heroin?" He says, "Yeah," but he says, "Just do you a little bit." He goes, "You'll feel so much better." I snorted that first line and I jumped up. I could move. I was fluid. I literally went from snorting a line or two here to shooting 3 grams a day in 2 months' time, and still was able to go to work. I could function. I could work, and I'd get all my stops done. I was selling programs at work. I'd sell $5,000 in programs in a week, and I got commissions off that, plus do all my stops and on this stuff. So it really hit me hard.
Yeah.
And it really hit me very hard to where, like, my second wife, we were getting divorced at the time, and I would wake up in the morning, and if he hadn't delivered to me the night before, I had to meet him somewhere during the day at work to get it, so that way I could not be sick, because it was physically making me sick. And I said, I cannot be like this. This is gonna kill me one day. And so it was about 2 or 3 months later, I just got sick of waking up sick like that, and that feeling, and shivering cold, and still having to go to work like that sometimes. And sometimes it might be, 6 to 8 hours into my 12-hour day before I ever got a hold of
Yeah.
my guy. And I said, no, I can't do this. So I took a month off, a month leave of absence, and I told my brother, I said, you go to my house. I said, I'm going to sit at yours, because I'd given him his house. And I sat in his bathroom for a month. I said, just come check on me at least once a day, just you. I said, that's it. Other than that, leave me alone. And I sat in that bathtub for a month, puking and shit on myself, going through the most horrific withdrawals, and quit cold turkey off heroin. And I did that for a reason, even though the doctor told me I could have killed myself. I said,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's either
dangerous.
I was gonna either die, or I was gonna make my body so violently ill that when I even looked at heroin after that, it would make me throw up. I didn't want to see it. Okay. I trained my body to reject it, and not even, I couldn't even look at it for the longest time. So well, years later, I'm married to my third wife. If I have a $30 an hour job, well, I get laid off, and I gave her like $3,000 to catch up the rent or whatever on her house, because I just moved in there. We'd just been together for a little while. I said, just go pay the rent. Well, the landlady comes up to me one day and hands me an eviction notice. I'm like, I just paid you $3,000. Why are you handing me this? And she said, she never gave me no money. I'm like, so we ended up getting moved out. Well, I had met some people through my job, and I had a lot of people that I knew that was, into the meth, and it wasn't any good things. Well, I ended up went in 3 weeks time, went from, getting an 8 ball of that stuff to let everybody try, to I was now pulling out 2 kilos a day, selling it
Yeah.
for
Isn't
almost
it
2 years.
crazy how fast it just escalates?
Well, and it did, and it had to for me, because I had 9 mouths to feed, and I was laid off until March. From September, at $30 an hour, that's a lot of money a week. I was making over $1,500 a week at the time, doing construction, commercial windows. And so March of 2018, asked my ex-wife to go get the tags on the vehicle because they'd expired. Gave her the money. She goes up to the Secretary of State office. She's gone for a couple of hours, and she comes back, and there's the yellow sticker. I didn't think nothing of it. We go out to Kalamazoo, make my normal run. We get back into town safely, get over to my brother's house. Well, he's not there, and I'm just so tired. She's just nagging at me. I said, just go back. Let's go back to the house. And she pulls out, and we get down the road, and we're like just a minute from home. I told her pulling the gas station because we had to get gas anyway. And the cops pull in behind us. And I said, why are they pulling us over? You weren't speeding. What's going on? They come up and they said, well, your plates are expired. And I looked at her and I said, what? And she said, she just didn't say nothing. I just looked up because I knew she had, I don't even know where she got the sticker from, but she had that same color sticker for that year, but she didn't pay for them. She didn't go do what I asked her to.
Yeah.
So they pull us over, and then they obviously I had a warrant for some ticket I hadn't paid out of, and then the county, that they called the county said it's more than 25 miles, just advise and release, tell them to come in and pay us, we'll clear it up, don't arrest him. So I hear this over the loudspeaker, and that cop says, well, since you have the warrant, I got to take an interim bond, but you don't have to go out there. I said, they said advise and release. He said, no, I'm going to just make you pay the interim bond if you say you have the money, and I'm going to book you. I said, okay, well, I can sit in my vehicle and book me. Well, he wasn't having it. He yanks me out of the truck, and I forgot I had somebody give me some back that they didn't want anymore, whatever. And I stuck it in my pocket and forgot about it. Never mind the fact that I just dropped off 35 ounces right before there. And I still had 5 ounces sitting in a false bottom under the seat of the driver's side, in a false
Yeah.
bottom that I wasn't worried about, because nobody's ever going to find that. Well, he pulls me out, and I remembered that I had that in my pocket. I'm like, I said, well, I'm going to jail anyway. Screw it. So he looks at that. He pulls me back to the car. They go up front and they pretend like they're going to yank her out of the car. They were up there for a minute, and I'm flipping out, kicking the windows of the car because they're just grabbing her and throwing her all around. And I'm like, what the hell? He pulls out this big bag of of course, of what it was, the drugs. And he goes, what's this? And I said, I don't know. Where did you find that? He said, well, it was under your seat. I said, I know there wasn't nothing under my seat. I said, if you noticed there was no trash on my side of the truck, I keep my truck clean. You
Yeah.
know, he said, oh no, we found it under her seat. I said, no, you didn't. He wouldn't even open the bag. They didn't even test the stuff that was in my pocket. They just told me what it was. They kept us out there for 4 or 5 hours. I was starting to get woozy because I hadn't eaten. They finally take us to jail, and they say they tested it at the police station. I'm like, you're supposed to test that in front of me. They did not. So they kind of got hit for that, but they were also denying me a quarter point because my checks I hadn't cashed, said I had a $20 an hour job, 30 with overtime. Well, I lost that job because it's on a school property. Now I have a pending felony. I can't be on that school, so I lost that job. They denied me 3 times. Finally, I had to hire a lawyer, and they were going to try to let me go through this trial because they thought they were going to have me dead rights because I would not tell the police anything about anybody. They tried to question me, and I just wouldn't tell them nothing. And so they were going to give me 6 to 10 years on a first felony offense.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
now in Michigan, to have a manufacturing delivery charge, you have to have 3 criteria out of 4. They had 1 criteria. They ran it for a year. I fought it for a year. Finally, I just got tired of it. I said, just if you can get me anything better, I would sign a plea deal. Just let me get it over with. I just want to get it over with. Well, my lawyer fails to tell me that because they kept threatening me with a 6 to 10 if I didn't talk. And she had to tell him that, look, if he says anything, he won't even make it to court. So why are you even pushing this issue? You keep pushing that, I'm going to take it to trial and we will win because there's no fingerprints on nothing. It wasn't his area of control. It's not his technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come to find out, when I got sentenced, they finally got a real sweet plea deal of 2 years to 20 years because Michigan has truth in sentencing, so it's 100% minimums. And so I said, you know what, I'm tired of fighting. I'll take the plea deal. I wish to God I had not have, because I would have never went to prison if she'd have told me that about what he said and taken it to trial. Because I found out my lovely, wonderful ex-wife, as soon as the cops went up to her window, she had pulled out of the false bottom. Now, mind you, you had to reach over to the passenger side to open it, and then lift her seat up, which was electronic, and then open the false bottom, grab it out, and she hands it to the cops and says, here, he told me to hang on to this. I didn't find this out for a year later.
Oh, no.
And
I was
once
going
I
to
found
ask
that,
earlier if she was your third ex-wife.
yes. And if I had known earlier that she had done that, that's when, as soon as they told me that, because my lawyer says, well, she didn't totally throw you under the bus. I said, what do you mean? She showed me the paper. I said, no, she totally threw me under the bus. She was trying to ease it up because she thought I would retaliate. By the time I got out of prison, I said, you know what? I don't want nothing to happen to her. I don't want nothing to do with her because I started my healing journey in prison. Prison saved my life. Okay.
Yeah.
Between the county jail and prison, I'd been in there almost a year and a half, almost 2 years. Well, I got sent to their SAI because I found out I had cancer in prison. Which is a boot camp. So I'm back in boot camp at 40 years old. I didn't like it the first time. I wasn't going to like it this time. But
Say
being
your
as I was
story is constantly like from one fire to another, from one boiling pot to another. I don't know what the saying is. It's like from the fire to the pot, or from the pot to the fire, or whatever. There's a saying
one
for it.
chaotic situation after the other. I mean, it was nothing. But that's I operated that way because that's what I knew best. I mean, when I was struggling, everything good that I went through in life, every time I made $100,000 or $200,000 a year, I was doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. It was not helpful to anybody. It was not. I was ruining lives dealing these drugs to people. I was ruining their lives as much as I was ruining mine. When I got charged and I was fighting this case, there was a point in time I have pictures up on my TikTok that you can see then and now of where I was doing 6 1-gram shots of meth a day just to try to kill myself. My wife was cheating on me at the time, and I knew it, and I just wanted to die. I put a loaded 9mm to my head that I loaded myself right in front of her, said, here, you want to keep putting me through this? This is what you want? And I pulled the trigger. It didn't go off. I walk outside, pull the trigger again, and then it goes off. It was the
Because
second time.
you are here for a greater purpose.
Right. There was the second time I
Mhm.
put a loaded shotgun in my head that I thought was loaded. It was loaded the night before. Somebody had the idea that I was not in the right frame of mind, and they unloaded it. And I pulled the trigger again, and it didn't go off. And he comes out and says, "Huh, I knew it." And I said, "What?" He goes, "That's why I unloaded that last night, is because I knew something was up. Because I
Oh, yeah.
would have done it right in front of everybody. There was a living room full of people, and I didn't care. I just, at that point, I wanted to die. And, I still, having these dark thoughts about death all the time because, going through everything I've been through, there was nothing good that went through my mind. Nothing. I mean, and anytime a man came at me, like, a grown man come at me, women and children, I can't harm them for nothing, but grown men, if they come at me, I don't see them. I see my dad there, and
Hmm.
now, mind you, I forgave my dad, and I understood. And, I never got to say goodbye to him. He died while I was in prison. So, which really bothered me because he did step up and teach me a lot of things that, uh, I was able to survive this world that I was in, even after prison, that had tried again to kill me. Um, so I'm in prison, and I'm nobody's called, nobody's written, nothing. I get sent to this SAI. I'm 90 days and I get to go home.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited. I shut my mouth. I didn't. Now, when I was in the military boot camp, I was a sassy mouth son of a gun. I had to do push-ups. I won some stupid prizes for some stupid games. A lot. Let's put it that way. When I got to the prison boot camp, I had 25-year-old corporals that could just stand there and scream in my face. They never had to. I had corporals there that dealt with me every day, did not even know my name. 90 days, I didn't say a word unless I had to say a word, unless I had to make it, because you had to speak just like in the military, and I already knew this stuff. I was in a bunk by myself. Everybody else had bunkies. They could get their beds done because they made you sandbag and then get inspection ready, just like in the military. I could do it all by myself. And they're like, "How are you doing this?" I said, "I've already been through this once." And I said, the first day, I said, "You know what? I can't do this. I'll just let them send me back to prison. I didn't like it the first time. I'm not going to like it this time." And I found out quick that they weren't going to let you do that because if you got that program, they try to make sure you succeed. So I went through 90 days of that, and everybody's like, "You just don't say a word." I said, "There's no point in talking." I said, "It's about self-discipline." I got in trouble one time in there because I said something to somebody that just couldn't shut their mouths, and he had the it was a captain. He had to reprimand me. He made me stand at the position of attention for over 2 hours, and
Wow.
he did it for the point that he wanted to show this room of 20 guys that I was in, that I shared this room with in bunks, that self-discipline, you got to have that in order to succeed in life. And he said, "This man is 40 years old and hasn't budged an inch because he knows he's going to have to start over if he does." He said, "I'm sure his nose is itching. He's got sweat pouring down his forehead, and he still stands stock still." He said, "Some of you could learn a lesson." And then he said something else. He said, "Just because you guys are in here," he said, "you're not defined by what you did. You're defined by what you do with it after." And I
Hmm.
almost teared up. And I said, "All right, shithead, fix your face." And he said, "What did you say?" I said, "Nothing, sir." He said, "No, no, 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 no." He said, "What did you say?" I said, "All right, shithead, fix your face." He goes, "What branch?" I said, "I don't want to talk about it." I said, "Fair enough." He said, "So you were in a campaign?" I said, "Bosnia in '96." And he said, "Oh," he said, "if I had to guess, you're probably like me in Army." Now, mind you, this man is like only 25 years old, still active duty military, and getting ready to go back. And I said, "Again, I just don't want to talk about it. It's hard for me to talk about it." And he said, "I get it." And he turned around and he said, "I want you guys to understand something." He said, "That man right there has seen things that you guys talk about, all the stuff you've done." He said, "You couldn't imagine some of the things that man has seen. And it's just standing here doing it, doing what he's supposed to." And mind you, this is one of the most asshole corporals that was there. Loved to mess everybody up. If one person failed, everybody failed. And I shook that man's hand at the end of it. And I said, "You know what? I respect you because, honest to God, that a lot of these guys need someone like you, in here to set them straight." I said, "Fortunately, I'm old enough to know that, hey, I need to get myself straightened up." So I get out on parole. I have an 18-month parole, which they only have 24 months, go up to 24 months in Michigan. So that's the longest parole you get, which is hard to do. Zero tolerance. If somebody calls and says they seen you with a gun, you're going right back. They don't have to have proof.
Wow.
6 days after I get out, I called my ex-wife and I said, well, I said I want a divorce. She calls the cop, says I threatened her. I got 45 days in the Eaton County jail and 90 days of tether for that. Zero tolerance.
Oh, wow.
I spent 7 months out of those 18 on tether because another time I saved 3 heroin addicts from dying. And because I was around drugs, I got put on tether again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did violate a couple times, but it was technical violations. Thank God for Trump's no crime, no time, because I didn't have to go back. However, I did start fighting sex trafficking because I hated that. I hate it with a passion. I watched it happen to my mom in front of me. And because I tried to stop their money flow, and I was literally kicking hotel doors in and pulling people I knew personally out of these hotels that were forced into it.
That's the thing that I don't think people realize with human trafficking is that a lot of times they're forced into it, or they're bribed into it with drugs. Like, if you want these drugs. Yeah.
Like a boyfriend or something, and it's white collar people, it's judges, doctors, there's some cops I found were doing it. Got people that dress nicely, will date a girl that's got low self-esteem, start sharing drugs with her and groom her, say, hey, why don't you do this for me, make us a little bit of money, honey, we need to catch up, if you love me, you'll do this. They groom them. They even have women grooming these girls, pretending to be friends, and then they're giving them this methamphetamine mixed with fentanyl, so they get that euphoric rush, and then they get that hooked on that fentanyl, and then they zombify so they can do what they have to do in the hotels, and they're not getting paid for it. They're treated like crap. Well, yeah. I had my B12 for my cancer to give me energy. Somebody decided that it was time for me to go because I was doing too much damage control. They were trying to do damage control because they were losing a lot of money because of me.
Yeah.
And mind you, this was a house that I was living in. These people were part of this, and I didn't know it at the time. They swapped my B12 with an arsenic-laced heroin shot. I put it in my hip like I normally did, and the next thing I know, I had people hitting me, waking me up, and there's the cops, there's paramedics. Mind you, I'm still 5 months out from parole, being off parole.
Wow.
I'm thinking, oh my God, my parole officer's going to find this out, and I'm going back. Luckily, the hospital didn't report nothing. They did call the cops because when they found the arsenic in my system, they said somebody tried to kill you. We have to report it.
Yeah.
After an 8-hour Narcan drip, I looked at that police officer and said, "I'm under arrest." He said, "No, I just need some questions from you." I looked at the doctor and said, "Am I free to go?" He said, "Yep." I said, looked at back at the officer. I said, "First one to get him wins." And I walked out of that hospital. That doctor goes, "That man should be downstairs in the morgue, not walking out of this hospital." He goes, "That's a bad man." He goes, "I would never want to cross him." He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "He took 4 Narcan shots at home and an 8-hour Narcan drip here, and he's walking out of the hospital." He had that much fentanyl-based heroin in his system and arsenic. He said, "I'll show you the results. He should be dead." So I realized at that point, I'm like, all right, now I know that I'm here for a reason. All my stuff was stolen. My Harley was stolen. My kids' Christmas presents were stolen. My retirement accounts that had hundreds of thousands of dollars in them from that job was stolen. I said, okay. So I started going after people by myself, one by one. And they got so scared, they were calling the cops on me. They were calling my associates in other organizations saying, "Hey, can you stop this guy?" And they're like, "Hey, you did it. We can't do nothing about this. We don't even mess with him like that. What are you thinking?" One of my brothers says, "Hey, get out of here. You're going to go back to prison." I said, he goes, "Promise me you will not do anything to go back to prison." I said, "You're a jerk." Because I can't, he made me promise I can't go back on my word. So I said, "Then you better deal with it for me." Two days later, I got off parole. I left for Florida. I moved to Florida, stayed there for a few months. I came back to Michigan to help a buddy work. I wasn't getting paid. I met somebody. I was moving back that way anyway. I ended up in Georgia for 7 months. The relationship got really toxic, and I started noticing all this stuff because I've been transforming. And I'm like, I can't do this. I need my peace. I left in the pouring rain, no clothes, left all my stuff there. my buddy came down a week later, picked me up in a semi from Michigan and in Savannah, and we went to Savannah, Georgia. We stayed on the truck with him for a month down in Florida, and then he dropped me off in Kentucky last year in April. And I said, I'm done. I need to get myself together. I found a job right away. I was making $22 an hour, but I hated the job. I hated that job with a passion. It was factory work. It was hot, dealing with fiberglass.
Oh yeah.
It was miserable. Okay.
Yeah.
But the job paid well. I had my apartment now that I still, paid for. I've, furnished it all myself, built my bed. I mean, I have a 60-inch computer monitor. It's a TV that I use for a computer monitor. Okay. I haven't had nothing like this in 5 years. So I'm ecstatic about it. I made $45,000 in 10 months last year. And that's how I did all this. And well, come January, because of my PTSD, I took a half-day vacation day when we come back, like at the end of the week. They were a little upset about it. They gave me 1 point, and they said it put me over the points and fired me. Well, I'll come to find out, I have an EEOC case concerning that anyway now. So, which they called me back within an hour the other day and set up my interview. So there's probably going to be an investigation. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I knew I wasn't happy. So when they let me go, I was like, I'm not upset. I'm not going to be making the same. I'm not going to be making $1,500 a week anymore, but I'm not upset. So what am I going to do? And I sat here for January and February, get my unemployment together, trying to get that going. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Now, mind you, I started the life coach master course in December. Hadn't really done but one certification by this point. But when March hit, I said, I'm finishing this deal. And you had to go through every video 100%. It was a self-study. So I had to do every worksheet, so that's why I use as my credibility. I had to sit here and discipline myself to do every worksheet and apply it to myself. So everything I teach my people is the same thing I went through.
Okay? Yeah. And it's not easy. I had someone tell me one day, like, people pay you that much money to just be their sober buddy. And I'm like, I'm not just a sober buddy. I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and 2 certifications as a professional coach and as an addiction coach. I'm like, I've spent thousands of dollars, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on my education. It's not easy. The training, like the coach training alone is hard. My
certification cost me $500.
Yeah.
Okay. That was for the master. That's how I got the master coach, was doing all 4 certifications. I got the master coach. That was $500. Now, mind you, I'm also taking right now, because I have a background in psychology. When I was in the military, I did counterintelligence. So I had that dark manipulative psychology I knew. So I knew psychology, but I can't use that as credentials because I was administratively separated. There's, they fired me. The Army fired me. So I cannot use my credentials. So now I'm thinking, well, I don't want to go be a counselor because I'll get sued. Because I'm brutally honest. I tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And some people whine too much, and I will tell them that. So I probably get sued. So I can't be a counselor. Okay. They have their place. We work well with them. But I can be a life coach because I can motivate the hell out of somebody. Say, hey, you're screwing up. Let's get this going. Let's be accountable.
Let's make a plan to move forward. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so I have some clients that do that. They'll be like, well, I just so you know, I'm still seeing my therapist, or they'll kind of tiptoe around it. And I'm like, no, I encourage my clients to have a coach and a therapist. And I'm actually getting a second master's so that I can get my therapy license in Texas, because the plan was, like, my master's program in 2019, it made me eligible to apply for the LPC in Texas. However, I waited 2 years and the credentials changed, the requirements changed, and now you need 62 hours instead of 48. And so I have to go, and your internship has to be specifically in counseling. So I basically have to get a whole new master's program. So I'm going to Texas Tech and getting the addiction counseling master's over there.
You know what's funny about that? And I've got to say this because I still have my SOP manual that I learned in the Army. It's called the Human Resources Exploitation Manual. Okay. What do you call the job, the department that hires you in a job? human resources. Okay, there's a big correlation there. Okay, so understand that I know psychology. Okay, I
Yeah.
know psychology. All right, I'm still taking a diploma right now. I've got to take my final exam. I'm doing it online again as another self study to get a diploma in psychology,
Yeah.
because to back up my life coach certifications. That way I have
Yeah.
something. Eventually I will probably go get my licensing. That way, if I need to fall back on a counselor, like a substance abuse counseling position, I can. I have applied for some jobs at a mental health and substance abuse place as a peer support specialist,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the same thing. But
Yep.
I really just am interested in starting my own business. And that's what I did in March. I said, you know what, I got to buckle down. This is what I want to do. I finished the certifications. And then I said, you know what? I need to write all this down because I need to get this story out. So I wrote my first book, From the Streets to Redemption, Choosing to Live When the World Wants You to Die. That's about my growing up, without the gory details, but you get the gist of it. It's impactful. It's only 63 pages. People have
Yeah.
short attention spans these days.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was in April. In May, I said, I can't sleep one night. And Dr. Wayne Dyer does this. He said it's when the universe aligns with him, he can't sleep. So he gets up and writes. I got up one night at 11 p.m. I knew I wasn't going to sleep. And I sat here till 11 a.m. the next day. And I hammered out this next book, which I just published in May, called How to Find Happiness in the Worst Possible Times. And with including the science behind it, I even include Joel and Natalie from the Transformation Academy. Who they taught, because that's their course I went through, and included all the science to back up everything. And I let a guy at work read one. He said, I love it when you said you might have just barely a roof over your head with roaches and ramen noodles, but and a cot to sleep on. He goes, but you still got to be grateful because you got something to live in. I said, hey, I've lived that way recently. So I'm
Yes.
always grateful.
Yes.
It's just to show people that gratitude, attitude, smiling, and forgiveness are the 4 basic components that you can make yourself happy. You don't need nobody else to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 45 years old. I'm a single man. I spend 90% of my time alone, and I'm okay with it, because when somebody comes around and messes with my peace, I tell them, get the hell out of my house.
Yeah.
You can come back later, but don't you mess with my peace. Go on.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
I've done that with family too. I
Yeah.
have family, because this is a question that comes up. Well, how do you deal with family that's toxic? I'll tell you, love them from a distance. I have family that I love that's in Michigan. I will never speak to them again for what they did to me, but I don't want nothing to happen to them. I still love them. I can love them from way out here in Kentucky and Georgia and in the South. They can stay their butts up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I did
You
it with
don't have
my.
to have toxic people in your life, because the first place to relapse is toxicity. That's the quickest road to relapse right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I do with my coaching clients, is I try to identify toxic things in their life. Like, what raises your stress level? What upsets you? Like, what brings you down? What are the things that push you over the edge from happy to uncomfortable to stressed,
And that's where it gets so
anxious?
uncomfortable, because people don't understand that. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to face that. Well, okay, that's understandably. That's why we send you still to counselors and therapists. But I'm leaning more towards this whole positive psychology thing. I think it works better. So that I might still go back and get my licensing just for that, because I like the idea of positive psychology. It works better because most counselors, they focus on what was wrong in the past, which you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to face that. Okay. You don't face that to look back and stay in the past, because we already stay in the past too much as it is, people. What you have to do that is to be self-aware and learn how to, because you're going to have to face it. So you're going to have to identify it. So you got to go back and face it to see what it is that happened, that why you're the way you are. Secondly, you're going to have to trigger yourself, and it's called anchoring. Trigger yourself to the point of almost over the edge to where you react, and then bring yourself down. You have to learn how to where your points are. Is once you have that right there, you literally, all you got to do is change how you think, because your thoughts create emotions that create behaviors.
Yeah.
So once you identify those points, what doesn't serve you and what's triggering you, get that crap out of your life and replace it with empowering stuff and
Something
people,
good. Yeah.
things, and then everything changes. Your whole life will change just by changing those little few things. And it's not that hard. They're not that difficult. All it takes is that little step.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when we seek happiness from outside sources, you're not finding happiness. You're relying on everybody else. And for a long time, I couldn't understand why everybody said, well, you got to be happy with you before you can make anybody else happy. I'm like, what the hell does that stupid mean?
Yeah.
You with
Your
somebody, so
happiness
it's easy for
has
you
to
to
come.
say.
Yeah, your happiness has to come from within. Like you have to be able to
Right.
be happy in the crappiest of places. Like I tell my daughter all the time, I'm like, when I found out I was pregnant, I lived in the trailer park where I had used more drugs than any place in Lubbock. Like my mom randomly decided to move her trailer to that trailer park, even though I told her she couldn't. Because you don't shit
I
where
think
you
I
eat.
know that trailer park because I think we lived there when I was a kid. I honestly believe I think I know
Prominent
that
one.
trailer park.
Yeah, prominent one. I said, you cannot, because you don't shit where you eat, right? So I'm like, you can't
Thank
move your
you.
trailer to that trailer park. And she wanted to know why. I'm like, you just can't move it there. Well, when I got sober, she lived there and I met my daughter's dad there. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I was living in the trailer park where I had done more drugs in my life than I'd done anywhere else, in a trailer that had holes in the floor, holes in the wall, no AC, hardly, like barely running water. Like it was mouse infested, but I was happy because I was sober and I was moving towards something. And
Right.
now we live in one of the most sought after neighborhoods in Dallas. And my daughter has a car. She can go to the store and buy whatever she wants. Like we don't worry for those things anymore.
Right.
But I tell her, I'm like, you have got to be able to be happy though in the trailer park with the holes in the floor, or in your nice cushy house.
I'm going to tell you this much. I have a lot of friends from high school in New Mexico that live in Dallas now, and they've done well for themselves, and I'm proud of and happy for them because, I didn't have the same opportunities that people did. Like I'll give you an example. My mom was a rebel. Her two younger sisters were 13, 11 when I was born, so they grew up and did what my grandmother asked them to. My middle aunt is a master psychologist herself. She's written a book called Black Eye, Blue Sky. Um, she's very successful. Her two kids are both in Nashville. The older one is a licensing manager for ASCAP and producing his little sister's music. So I'm proud of all of them. I'm glad they worked hard. I wasn't afforded those same opportunities, but I always said I will make it through anything. I've proven this time and time again. I can make my own way. I don't need anybody because of everything I've been through. I've learned how to make something out of nothing. And I'll tell you, when I hit last September in 2022. My one of my brothers killed himself, and that hit me hard. And I still hadn't found that happiness from within. I couldn't figure out how to find that happiness in just any situation, except for just to try to be positive. Well, when he killed himself, and I took one day off work, and I, I meditated, I prayed. I'm like, what is going on here? And I got the answer I needed. That hey, I found the peace that he wasn't hurting no more. That because nobody knew. I found the peace in that situation, knowing that he was feeling better, he was free, and it made me feel better. And I'm like, that's the answer right there. That is it. Nothing is going to bother me that I can't control anymore. I can't control it, can't change it. It's not going to bother me. It's not going to affect me. Okay. I have the choice of how to react to this. Okay. And by me reacting negatively, and that's just bringing out, it's like they say shit rolls downhill. That's very true because that's what happens. You lose your keys in the morning, you get stuck in traffic, everything goes haywire because you're attracting all that negative attention.
Mm-hmm. But if you
Same
flip
thing
the
with
script,
positivity.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So positive, starting to be positive, and I'm thinking, okay, now I'm doing these certifications. I'm like, this is all coming together. It's making sense. I wrote these books, and I'm like, I got to write something on happiness, and I did. And my first book has sold a lot more copies than the second one, but that's because I haven't really promoted the second one because I'm waiting. That's part of my coaching program. I have a program where finding the happiness now program. It's like a 12-week program, and if people purchase that package, I will order them a copy of that book for free because it follows right along with the same concepts. The book's worded a lot differently, but it follows the same: the limiting beliefs, the mood, the time, the triggers and wires, everything, the desire. It follows all those 6 steps. And that's what it literally is: 6 steps. But the main important one is limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
People don't even understand how much our childhood influence our lives now. Okay. Like, here's a good one that I like to use all the time: that money doesn't grow on trees. Well, first of all, yes, it does, because it's made of paper. Okay.
Right.
It may not be the same kind of paper, but it's still made out of trees. Okay.
Right. But
Second
we
of
have
all,
that limiting belief that there is
enough
a
money.
limit on the money that we can have.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And so you
we
don't
grew up
go
with,
after what you want.
yeah, because we grew up
Yes.
with a scarcity mindset of like, there's
Yes.
never enough, there's not ever going to be enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the head. But
Yeah.
when I did the research, there is enough money in this world for everybody in the world to be rich. There really is. Okay, so why are we not all doing this? I said, okay, I'm going to take this. I've taken the entrepreneurial road before. I've owned my own businesses, but it was in fields that I knew everything about the field. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how to run the business. This I didn't know nothing about. I stepped
Yeah.
into a world. Marketing is not my strong point at all. I will be honest with you. I could sell ice water to the devil. Okay, I could charm the panties off a snake. Marketing, I'm lost. Okay, I'm getting there, but
It's
I
a
will
whole
tell you,
nother beast all its own.
I will tell you though that I have completely done everything I've done except for my LLC, which was $40 to Secretary of State, and 2 Facebook ads I've run. I've spent no money but that $50 up till this. Now I'm getting to where I have to start spending money soon, but I started with no capital, no loans, no help. I built everything. My social media is all monetized. I've built this following. I've written these 2 books, published them, and made money off of them without spending a dime out of my pocket. And it's not been easy. I've had to do a lot of research. I've started something, had to go back and redo it. But I'll tell you what, Chat GPT has become my best friend.
Oh yeah.
I did not use it to write my books. I wrote those naturally. I did run it
Yeah.
through there to get feedback
Enhance
as
it.
if
Yeah.
say, is this good enough for an audience? And I got, great reviews from it. I use it like I will put in the prompt. When I make a prompt, I'll put in every detail that I need, everything out of my mind. All it does is writes it out for me real quick. So I ain't got to spend hours doing it. It writes it in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So I save so much time with that. It's amazing. I'm getting ready to pay the $20 a month for the upgraded because it saves me that much time, because without that, I would be still 6 months behind where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I have the upgraded version. Highly suggest it. I think you said something about looking at my website. Was it you that said you looked at my website?
I have, because I do look at everybody's. I look into all their stuff. I haven't looked into it detailed, but I did get some ideas from your website. Yes, I did. Good ones.
I put into Chat GPT like top phrases for sober coaches, and so that really gave me like an outline of what to include on my website. So yeah, like Chat GPT is.
Well, and here's the thing. I tried Shopify too, because I have a merch line that I'm trying, that's going to back up my my whole coaching, my whole mission, because my mission is to save lives. Because here's some statistics. 1992, we had less than 6,000 opioid deaths. Okay. 2012, there was 30,000. By 2022, we had 107,900 opioid related deaths alone in the United States. That is astronomical. We are not talking about this enough. And so I put up a poll on Alignable. I'm part of that community as well. I want to know from people, and I'll put it out here. I want to know from people that have never experienced drugs, never experienced addiction, never had family. I want to know what their idea of it is, because there needs to be some education first. Because when it hits your home and you don't really know the true definition, because we're still locking up our drug addicts. I got locked up when I put myself through rehab. I knew I needed the help. I put myself through this before the court. The courts never asked me to. They still sent me to prison. You know what I learned in prison? I didn't learn. I made sure that I told myself I'm going to start transforming and healing myself, but I didn't learn reform in prison. I learned how to be a better criminal in there. It's a crime school. It is not. So you cannot lock up people that have diseases, that have trauma, that some of them people are begging for help.
Yeah,
they really are.
They really
you're
are.
Throwing right back to those dealers. You're throwing your kids out to these dealers because you say they don't want to change their life. Hug them tightly and get rid of the people giving them this shit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I don't think there's enough education out there on what addiction really looks like. And my daughter's a teenager. Yeah.
That's why I want to hit TEDx, because
they need us out there. They need more of us out there. And I don't look like a traditional drug addict, right? Like my daughter's friends, they're like, your mom, they'll listen to my podcast because her friends all follow me on Instagram, and they're like, your mom did hard drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Oh, I tell people all the time, I shot up for 26 years. You cannot tell I don't have a track mark one because I took care of myself, you
yeah,
know.
it doesn't
But
look like what you think it looks like. We're not
no,
always bums on the side of the road shooting up under an overpass. Like, that's
well, as
not
a matter of
always
fact,
it.
when I was in Georgia, the lady I was dating, her kid said, I can tell a meth head any day of the week, they act all crazy and stuff. Well, little did he know that because of our toxic relationship, I got back into the drugs for a little while and he never knew the difference. I can,
Yeah.
because I went to work, I did it. I said, you don't really know because that's how closed-minded this world is. And that's just an example. Now, I've been clean for a year and a half now, almost 2 years now. So I'm proud of that, because that's a daily struggle because
It
there's a
is.
lot of stressors in my life still that I just, I tend to blow off or I go meditate, but that would be so easy just because my mind goes 90 to nothing. I can't shut up half the time. And that's somebody asked me the other day, said, are you high? I said, no, this is what I'm like sober. I
Yeah.
said, when I'm high, I don't say much. I just sit
It's
down,
the
I focus.
opposite. Yeah.
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 I said,
Yeah.
you give me Xanax. And I said, and I'll chase the police down the road. I'll put back stuff I never stole. It has the opposite effect. Okay. And I have done both of those. I've chased the police on Xanax and I've put back stuff I didn't steal. The store's like, what are you doing, sir? I said, putting this back. It was outside. And they're like, we don't even sell that here. I'm like,
Oh, whoops.
I slapped a gator thinking I slapped a gator in Florida, not realizing it. But yeah, me and Xanax don't get along. We don't.
Yeah.
I used to be on 30 psych meds. I don't take none of them because I don't like not being in control of my body. That's why I quit doing drugs. Well, I don't like not being in control.
Yeah.
I broke $1 million open MRI machine trying to get an MRI of my knee because they gave me Xanax and I told them not to because they thought it was going to calm me down.
No,
Yeah,
opposite.
they had to replace $1 million open MRI machine.
Wow.
I said, please
Wow.
do not give me Xanax. And they said, here, no, it's a Valium. I took that pill and I started saying, that ain't no Valium. That
Yeah.
ain't no Valium. My heart started racing and I said, get me out of here. I'm claustrophobic. I started punching that thing, kicking. I busted every bit of it I could on the way out.
We need to listen to people when they say they can't take a certain thing. We know what we're talking about. Yeah. Well, I'm going to put the links to your books in the notes and your all of your social media, TikTok. You sent me all the things.
I wanted to ask you the other day. I sorry I didn't get back to you on Messenger. Is that I'll say it now here. If there's anybody like beyond your coaching clients that needs help that just doesn't have the money to pay for it, send them to me because I'll do some free stuff. Money's not an issue with me right now because the message to me is more important. Helping is more important. Yes, I do need to get paid, but I would rather have a testimony right now because I am a new coach.
Yeah.
Gaining credibility. I'd rather have the testimony. So if there's anybody out there that maybe if overflow, because I would never step on your toes, but if you know somebody, because I can do virtual, that needs help, that can't pay, send them right to me. I'll be glad to help.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a great place for our listeners to hear it because there are a lot of people out there who need the help, and traditional counseling hasn't worked for them. Traditional rehab hasn't worked for them. They really need someone that they can talk to who can walk through early recovery with them without judgment, without feeling ashamed, without feeling like if they do relapse and fail that they're going to be judged for it. And I think that's a really amazing part of coaching is that we really are walking with them.
And being as I was a diplomat, when I was in the crime world and in organizations, I did a lot of politics because I was good with talking things down with people. I can talk to people without humiliating them, making them understand, even constructively criticizing them without making them feel ashamed and empowering them still and saying, hey, you got this. You just got to switch something up a little bit. I don't ever shame anybody. They don't have to be humiliated. I can talk to someone. And even in people that are slacking off, I can put them in their place without ever raising my voice or harming them in any way and say, look, let's just get this right because this ain't going to serve any of us. And it's just all we're going to do is end up in a worse situation. So let's just work together and get it right. I'm just very passionate though about saving people's lives because just 2 months ago, I lost another buddy to heroin, and everybody but one person, my other friend, she stayed there by his side trying to help him while everybody else ran out and let him die.
Yeah. Well, if you could leave the listeners with one last message, what would it be?
There's hope. If I can change, anybody can change. Okay. I was a career criminal. I've done prison time. I was severely beaten. I've done some nasty things to people myself. that I'm not proud of that I have to answer for. If I can change my life, you can change yours. Just reach out to somebody, because there's too many people hiding in the shadows, afraid because of the stigma, or they're, feel like they're burdened. You're not. That's why we do this. This is why, because we have that experience. We know we've done this. We've done our work. We are the best option to help you, because a doctor can't help you better than we can. They've never done this. They've never been there. We know what it's like to have those feelings of despair, darkness, wanting to die. We know that. Okay. We've been there. We've done the work. We can help. We're the people that have been drug addicts and changed their life. They're the best. That's why they make the best substance abuse counselors, because they've been there. So just reach out. Everything I have, like you said, you'll post all my social medias, my website. I use Life Coach Hub as well as the software, because it's easier for me. But even if you can't pay for the packages, just call me personally or email me, and I will work something out to where we can make something happen and you can get the help you need.
Awesome.
Money is never an issue with me. Just reach out. I would rather help you first and worry about the rest later. Because I'll always be okay, but you're not if you're still doing those drugs, especially heroin. You're not safe, and that's a passion for me. It's why I get up every day. It's what drives me to do this, is to save some lives. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being here.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I appreciate it, and it's humbling. It really is. I feel grateful, and it humbles me to be able to serve other people for once. Instead of taking from other people and being a thug and a bad person, because I wasn't always a good person. And I get to live that fulfilling life now, because I feel wealthy already. Even though entrepreneurism, they say these people out there let's get it right. People that say that you can do it in 4 hours a day and you scale to 100,000 in 90 days, they're lying to you. It takes a long time. There's a lot of uncertainty. You stay broke a long time, but it is so rewarding that once you feel that, you will never, ever go back to a regular night. I have recently, just to pay the bills, but I still keep on my business. I keep going, because I will never give this up. It is so much freer to be able to sit on my butt at home and do what I want to do. I can sit in my underwear and write a book if I want to. I know there's a little much information, but hey, you know what? I can do what I want. Ain't nobody telling me, hey, you got to go over here. You got to be here at this time. No, I don't, buddy. If I don't make money, it's my own fault. So.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening this week. And until next week, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week.
Stay positive.
Thanks.
Thank you. You have a good one.